All right, welcome back. We're StoryDads.
Welcome back, everyone. We are on podcast 21 here.
That's right. This is our season 2, I guess.
Season 2, because we said originally when we set out to do this, we're going to do 20 of them, and then we'll kind of see if we want to continue or not. We're having fun with it, so we're going to keep our foot on the gas and keep going with it, and hope we still have listeners by this point. But we're getting back to kids' movies today. It's with our first one that's not a Disney movie.
Right. Interestingly, this was an era where SKG DreamWorks had just begun. It's no longer called SKG DreamWorks, but at the time it was, and that was Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen. So Spielberg came from, he kind of, Amblin exists now, but I think for a while it didn't. So he came, and Geffen came, bringing the music, and then Katzenberg came bringing the animation knowledge because he was formerly at Disney. And they made this new studio. And so the first thing they did was Ants, which
this came out after Ants?
I think so, or maybe concurrently, developed concurrently, because Ants was digital, which was a new format at the time.
Yeah.
And this was 2D. And at the time, Disney was the only show in town. In 1998, Disney was still just everything they came out with was a smash hit.
Yeah.
And so putting together a new studio and coming out with a new 2D animated feature film.
Yep.
And then what's funny about it, now it's hard to watch this story and try to be objective about it.
Micah, I'm realizing we haven't said the title of this. We're doing the Prince of Egypt, by the way.
Yeah.
You probably know
Prince
that
of
realizing
Egypt.
on this, but this is the Prince of Egypt, which we also selected for this, being that a lot of these shows or movies, we are talking about how they hearken to some element of Western canon. And so as we're continuing our journey forward in that exploration, we just do one that goes right to the heart of everything that's built on the Western canon, the Exodus story.
It's like the cornerstone potentially of Western canon. And so it's hard to be real objective about how it fits into Western canon, being that it's so foundational. But I guess that is important to define in if you're going to talk about it being foundational, is you got to know why.
Right. Right.
But also to talk about it as a movie, because this is a couple of different things. It is, I would call it a Moses story because it is highly adapted. Yeah. There's a lot of it that isn't, supposing that Moses is a historical figure, or at least, a mostly historical figure with myth around him, or regardless of, whether this is the cornerstone of a personal faith or not. But for a large portion of the world, this is the cornerstone of their world.
They even say at the end of the movie, they pull a line from the New Testament, a line from the Old Testament that harkens to this story, and a line from the Quran. It's they're going at all the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah, if you're a monotheist, chances are this is part of what forms the bedrock of your worldview. But I was also trying to look at it as a story as told now from the place where we have been informed by this story and its original telling. So it's funny is when you're going to start a new animation studio to compete with another animation studio that has made its bread and butter off of pulling storybook stories, that you would go, well, what's the oldest storybook story? Let's do Exodus.
If we're going to go big on this, if we're going to go we're going against Disney, who's owned fairy tales, who's owned the Hans Christian Andersen stories, who's owned all these things, right? Yeah. What are we going to do? We're going at a biblical story. We're going to make it a kids movie, right? These stories that have deep, profound meaning. We're going to find the deepest, most profound one we can, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you want a storybook? How about the Bible or the Torah in this case? And because I also think that, I don't know if this factored into it, but it's Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen are all Jewish creators and executives. Sure. And so I don't know if there's a part of it that was sort of illuminating that that cultural aspect as well of the sort of combined heritage. Let's do a Jewish movie.
Right.
So The Prince of Egypt, which is an interesting way even to frame the Moses story.
I remember when it came out. I mean, I was little. I was kind of in or around church. We would go kind of nominally, but I remember hearing about this movie around church, but I didn't watch it until I was like older, and I didn't connect it to like the Moses story, because that's not what I thought of as the Prince of Egypt. Like, wait, Moses was a Prince of Egypt? How does that work? You know, they do the thing where they make him Ramses' brother and assume Ramses is the pharaoh at that time. But they made a good movie.
Yeah, it's a super cool way to frame the film.
Yeah,
in a way that's fresh without completely bastardizing it into something, crazy. Like when you watch the old Charlton Heston 10 Commandments, like I'm pretty sure like David is a character in the movie, and it's like, that's what, like 600 years later, 400 years later, like they weren't peers.
Right.
But so this interesting way to frame it. And so one of the things that's interesting, I think, in them making them brothers, and one of the themes in this movie is this idea of heredity, is that, by the time Moses comes along, the pyramids are already ancient, which is, at the time period that Moses would have existed, should he be a historical figure, like that's true. The pyramids are already from a long lost era by the time the Hebrews and Ramesses II and everything are there. And so there's this already this dynasty and this heredity that's ancient of days that Ramesses and the Egyptians are a part of. And then you bring in Moses, who has no father. Yeah. We don't know who his dad is. And you have the Hebrew people that don't have their father. They've been separated from, their Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by, I think, 400 years. So they're also a fatherless people.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then what this movie is about is the coming together of these two dynasties, because Moses, ejects this life of privilege. He's cast out where he meets his father and the Hebrew father, and then returns to say like, hey, my people's dad is back, and it's time for our dynasty. Like we're leaving. It's time for us to part. And so it's an interesting way to frame that conflict. By having those two main characters be brothers that love each other, because in the scriptural account, when the Hebrews depart, the Egyptians say, like, they give them all this wealth and stuff, and they're like, hey, don't go too far. So there is this connection, and then smash cut 2,000 years later, where the Messiah comes, he even spends time in Egypt, almost as a parallel, being like a second Moses kind of thing. Not to skip ahead. What were some of your thoughts coming into this film?
So it was interesting when I watched this with my kids, who were 4 and 6 at the time. It was early, but it was it was a cold introduction to the brutality of history, because the movie opens up on all the babies are getting dumped in the Nile River, and which is why Moses was the baby in the basket. At church they kind of heard like baby in the basket story and something like that. And
it's kind of innocuous,
but like my 4-year-old's eyes go wide. He's like, Dad, I don't want the babies to die. What's happening? Like I was like,
what have I done?
Right. But
it's okay. That baby doesn't die. It's just all and I'm trying to be like, let's just kind of
move on to it. Like, again, another thing about like movies around this like place in the 90s. This is a kids movie. This is a children's movie, animated series. Like, they didn't shy away from like the cold, dark, evil things of history that would play out in there. It's there. And I mean, they were both pretty shaken up and had to kind of like pause it and be like, well, now we definitely have to finish the story, because you got to get to the other side to see how all this kind of plays out.
Let's detour there for a second, because what you said is interesting to me about like, well, now we have to finish the movie. Like so frequently. So my son, and he gets really emotionally affected by film. And so he gets scared. He gets sad. Like if someone is really overtly cruel, it like hurts his feelings. Like he'll turn and he'll go, Dad, I feel bad. And and he's 6 and he's still really, he's a really sweet kid, really affected by this stuff. I don't know if this happens in your household. This is what I wanted to detour to. When you encounter these moments, my instinct is, so my wife's instinct is he's getting worked up. We got to turn it off. And my instinct is he's getting worked up, so we got to get to the conclusion. Like, like, no, that monster's too scary. Turn off the movie. And I was like, that's why he needs to see the monster die. Like he needs
to see the monster defeated at the end. Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
No, and I think it's the maternal instinct to protect and shelter, and which is a good instinct, which is a necessary instinct. And then there's a paternal instinct to encourage and go slay the dragon and try to confront your fears. And, those are both there. And, they both have their place. I would argue the maternal instinct's right. Like if a horror movie comes up, which has a bleak ending, nope, we're not at the age for that. Like, that's the time to shelter, right? Like, I know how the story ends, and I know that like this is the start of Moses starts out as being cast out and then going through this crazy journey to ultimately deliver the people around everything. So like I want my kids to see that message, because all they know of the story is just the horrors of the babies getting killed, and that's it. Like, that's not the end of the story, and you can't stay there, because like that's the worst place you could stay. Again, therefore, maybe this is overthinking, but if you've been with us this long, this is what we do. So, but I think it's true, and I think that is very much needed. Right?
Yeah. You push through the genocide so that you can get to the freedom. And so
which is history, by the way. Like that, we're talking about archetypes. Like that's the arc of history, is like you push through the genocide and the horror and the devastation and the end of everything in order to get to the resurrection and the healing and the freedom that comes with that.
Yeah. So he does that. He finds again, the cast on this is insane, because when Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen start a new studio, and they go, hey, do you want to be in our first animated film? You say yes. And so all these amazing actors did say yes. And so the cast is just amazing. And it's not even like stunt casting. Sometimes they'll cast celebrities for the sake of their name, and they aren't the best like audio, like vocal performer.
Right.
Like, not to call her out, because I really like Scarlett Johansson, but part of her dynamic is her visual, like her seeing her perform like physically is part of the dynamism and power of her celebrity. When she was the voice of Ka in Jungle Book, that like understated kind of thing, it just doesn't play, because it's a digital snake.
A lot of the Disney remakes with Lion King, I mean, star-studded cast, but it's all like it is voice acting, right?
Yeah, and voice acting is just a different animal. No pun intended. But in this case, they pulled in like insane talent that all are also fantastic voiceover performers. And so awesome cast. And then so Moses like commits this sin of murder. And so in a way he like walks out.
Speaking of the other brutal things, like they put that in there too. Kids movies, like we're not sanitizing scripture on this at all. Like we're throwing it all in.
And his dad, when he confronts him, his adopted dad, is just like, oh, well, they were just slaves. And like, he full well knows where Moses comes from. There's no way he doesn't. Right. And later his brother echoes that, right? There's more of this, like the sins of the father visited on the son kind of thing. Yeah. So Moses commits this sin. He's exiled into what should be death. Yeah. Where he encounters the God of forgiveness and repentance, who gives him new life and returns him to a new calling, which is this little microcosm of what we as individuals do in faith, right? So that was one theme that I saw in this. Yeah. But he gets cast out of Egypt and crosses this sea. Again, there's always around page 30, there's like the crossing of the threshold into the new adventure. And it usually involves crossing a body of water. And in this case, it's the antithesis of water, but it's still a sea. And he goes out in it, and the vestiges of his royalty are washed away as he steps across the threshold into this new adventure.
Right. The burning bush scene, which you brought up when he encounters the God of forgiveness. We've had a couple podcasts where we've talked about just animator flex, like the pink elephants in Dumbo, where they just like, for the skills and whatever they had at the time, they just were like giving everything they had. That scene feels, it's one of the most talked about scenes in this movie, but you start a new studio, you're going for like this big epic moment. Like this is the first one we're doing. Like that scene feels like they threw everything they had at it. The voiceovers, the music, the animators. It is like and then, by the way, like Hollywood not being shy about like, we're going deep at like this crux of the Abrahamic religions moment there. And we're throwing everything we can at it and honoring it.
Yeah. Yeah. And really pushing for something that's transcendent, that is like committed to the source material.
Yeah.
And then also just like a word on style while we're talking about the animation flex is, you know, when you're stepping into an arena that's been so dominated by one producer, to try and find your style in that is so challenging. And I thought they really did an amazing job of finding a style that was like adjacent enough that it wasn't unrecognizable. It wasn't like some of the, The Secret of Kells or Wolfwalkers where it's like, it's totally divergent, which I love those movies, but I'm not calling them out. I'm just, So it's adjacent where it still says like mainstream animated film, but it also says not the one that you're used to.
It feels distinct from the Disney style for sure.
It has its own signature, but man, the anatomy and the characterization and the way they were able to capture the talents likenesses within these Middle Eastern milieu and like type was awesome. Like Zipporah has got a Michelle Pfeiffer flavor, even though she's Midianite, and so structurally, he crosses the threshold, goes out in the desert, and then like finds shepherds.
Yeah,
and of course the Hebrew God is a shepherd, and among obviously other things. Eventually the Messiah is a shepherd, and eventually their king David is a shepherd, right? So he comes out from Egypt into this new identity where he's got to like take on shepherdness. Yeah. And then, when he goes to meet the I am that I am, it's in leaving the 99 to follow the one. Like he is in the act of behaving like a good shepherd. Because that one sheep escapes and he follows it, and that's what leads him to the shepherd of all shepherds. Yeah. So it's very cool. It's very like honoring the source material.
Well, it's honoring the source material, but you said like, they're trying to honor the source material. At the end, they quote from the Torah, and they quote from the Quran, they quote from the New Testament. But all those themes you brought up are distinctly Christian. Like the illusions that they have in that, they all leak into this movie in a very explicit way. Like we talked about with animation, this stuff doesn't happen on accident. Like they have to put hours and hours and lots of money into making each of these decisions. So in the Exodus story, Moses isn't traditionally the prince of Egypt or on par with Ramses. But what's interesting is in the artistic choices they made to have that there, it gives you this allegory of Christ stepping down from his place of authority, place of royalty to become man, and then in order to bring those people out of slavery to liberate them, which again, these very distinct Christian messages are a huge part of that, even though like it doesn't have the feeling of like Christian studio trying to propagandize some message or anything like that.
And I think part of that is that like the Messiah story is the parallel of the Moses story in all the ways, and just all the way down to like Passover is our church does sort of a messianic Passover Seder kind of thing, and that has like kind of upset some of my Jewish friends, as they're like, what are you doing? You're like co-opting our thing. And I was like, well, Christians do Passover every week. It's like, I think it's the third cup that we're emulating when we do Passover, when we do
communion.
Thank you. I'm just losing all these words today. And so it's like that, like it all stems right there. And part of that is because I think, what is so easy to forget is that like Christianity is just Judaism, just continued, and so it like, it makes sense if there's any truth to it. it makes sense that it would be so prevalent at its the point where it germinates into this new thing. Where anyway.
Well, the Christian faith is Christ comes to fulfill the law, not abolish it. So he is the embodiment of all of these things and all these things. Right. So it makes sense you would see these things that how he like Moses is a precursor to him, and the things that the prophet Isaiah brings up, like all the prophecies, ultimately he's the culmination of all these things. That's what the figure of Christ is meant to represent.
Yeah, they were all up to the same mission. Right. You know, our whole plan is to we're all trying to reunite with our father, and so that is Moses' story. He comes out, he reunites with his father as he's leaving the 99 to follow the one sheep. He encounters, you know, the shepherd of all shepherds and the I am that I am, and he's given a sword, you know, to come back with the hero's journey. Like, here's your staff. Like, this is you're gonna go on an adventure. Here's your sword.
Yeah,
and you have a father now. Like, I'm gonna be with you. And of course, in the actual book, you know, Aaron goes with him because Moses was not a good speaker. He was also supposed to be, I think, like 80 years old at this point or something like that. You know, like it was just far less cinematically interesting.
Totally.
So, you know, I get why they adapted it.
But also ages around the time where Semitic writing, it's like that. It's not exactly like that's the number of years. It's just
there's symbolism tied into ages.
Yeah.
But, you know, like the tension that they create between his adopted brother and his biological brother, it works really well for the movie, especially in terms of heredity, where he's trying to take on a new heredity for Aaron to doubt him because it's not in the source material.
Yeah.
But it makes for a good story, right? And then he goes back to confront his adopted brother, which in many ways is like his real brother because he grew up with him and he loves him and all that.
Yeah.
And then what I love is that first musical number when he comes back is playing with the big boys because and historically this is cool because a lot of the things that the early Hebrews did were in emulation of Egyptian culture. Like the way that the tabernacle is built and the way that it was constructed and formulated was very similar to the mobile military tents of the Egyptians. So culturally they've been there for 400 years. So like you're gonna bring some of that with you.
They appropriated it.
That's right. The patriarchy started cultural appropriation so early. And so when he comes back and they're like, you're playing with the big boys, like, hey, we've been doing religion for a few thousand years.
Right.
And this is cute that you show up like, oh, you talk to a bush. Like,
oh, your God said you guys are going to leave. Like, okay, we know
you've
this
got
game.
one. Like, nice. That's a good start. Come back when you've got 100, you know? And so it's a cool musical number. And of course, Steve Martin and Martin Short doing, you know, what only they can.
Yeah.
Let me see. And then they have that great moment where, again, unless you were familiar with the source text, you might not recognize it for that is when Ramses, his heart gets hardened and you see it on screen. And so for everyone, you know, that grew up going to synagogue or to church, they're going to see that moment and be like, oh, that was it. There it is. You can see his eyes narrow and almost turn. Like he always takes this like serpentine quality where it's like you are now the antagonist and your heart has been hardened and
so I mean, you know, then continues the story of the Exodus where you know Moses then leads them to the edge of the Red Sea. I'm not as familiar with this movie as some of the other ones we've done, but the one like that song of like as they're leaving, there's a guy who I followed on some of the socials. His name's Brett Bowles, but he's a music teacher. He does a really interesting like breakdown of the musical composition of that song, of how it's symbolizing a people being rooted in their past, but then driving forward to the future, and how all of that plays out musically. And he does a really good job. A little quick, easy 1 minute explanation videos. He's a cool one to listen to in light of like a lot of the themes we talk about the storytelling within the
we should tag that in here if we can. Put the link in.
But it's but I mean, music in Prince of Egypt, it's as up there with the Disney classics as any of them.
Yeah, they really bring it. And the song that Moses and Ramses sing when they're in the sort of montage of all of the plagues.
Yeah.
Is also so epic. Like just the forces coming together and the discordance, and then but it's still a duet because they still, they still love each other. And ultimately, the mission of this Hebrew God is to save all of them.
Totally.
Doesn't want to be in this position. And then the Passover scene, the final plague, and how Moses knows it's the final plague already, and he's like, please do not make this happen. This, you can stop this. This does not have to be the choice. And there's that aspect that I think doctrinally where God says to us, like, okay, your will be done. I said, like, hey, this is the best way for you. This is what I'm asking. Your life's going to go better if you do this thing over here. But if you insist on this, okay, I respect it. And so that angel of death scene is is so Spielberg. It's so like Close Encounters-y, it's so beautiful the way it plays out. It's so amazing how graphic it is without showing anything. And
and then watching scenes that shake your kids up. Like, again, this doesn't shy away from like angel of death, firstborn kids, like that all across the land. Like it's a rough one.
And then and the Pharaoh's son has like the exact same profile as my son. So as he's like laying him down on that plinth. And I'm sitting there watching it with my kid. I look over at him. It looks just like this little bronze cherubic little thing, and I'm just like trying not to lose it. I wonder where he gets it. But it's just so haunting, and so. But again, the very next thing in the movie is that triumphant song of dancing and wildlife and travel and hope. And so it's like, we got to push through this, kid. I know this angel's creepy, and not to mention it's really difficult doctrinally. When he turns to me, he goes, is God killing everybody? And it's like, well, we gotta kind of talk about that.
Well, it's true. Like, it's true to life. It's, you go through the horrors, you go, like, it's the, like, doctrinally, like, all right, is God doing this? It's like, this is how the reality of the world is set up. This is how the reality of nature exists. I think it was Pageau was talking about the plagues as a breakdown of the created order in Genesis. He had some way I couldn't attempt to try and explain, but at the level of detail he does. But the plagues are an undoing, they're an unraveling of the order of nature that God sets up through the days of creation.
Interesting.
Ending with the death of the firstborn of human, which symbolizes like the next generation, which symbolizes your lineage, which symbolizes all of these things ultimately culminating in being lost. So it's like, this is what and is that true? Well, when you resist and cling to tyranny and resist the change of the future, like, nature starts rebelling against you, and your crops die, and the things fall apart around you, and pests creep in, and the next generation gets sacrificed.
And the other thing is that the death of the firstborn was the declaration of Pharaoh. That was what he demanded. And so in a way, it's like going like, hey, these are the terms you offered. You said, let's take the firstborn, and I am just saying, okay, let's. And so you made a way out for your people. I'm going to make a way out for anybody that'll listen to me. So when Pharaoh visited that sentence of death on the people, he decided who got to live and died. And when Yahweh comes to say, okay, let's do that to the people. But on my rules, anybody can be saved. All you have to do is listen.
And so I think when your kid has that, like, oh my gosh, is God doing this? Is God, like, that's the thing we all wrestle with, where it's like, this God seems bad, this God seems evil. And to an immature eye that maybe doesn't have a level of depth of understanding, that just looks at this from that sense, like, it looks like that. And a lot of people wrestle with that. And there's natures and horror. It's really, I think what your kid's wrestling with is the problem of suffering. Like, if suffering exists, how could a good God do this? It's like, well, that's one of the deepest questions of faith you're asking there, kid. Like, let's start wrestling with it. Yeah, exactly.
I've also heard that the plagues are ordered in such a way that they address Egypt's deities.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
That each one of them is a specific affliction of something that the Egyptians hold holy. So
I think I've heard. And then Seth, the god of the underworld, is the final plague, which is the angel of death. Yeah. And so again, I'm sure there's some people who know this stuff much better than we do, as we're certainly like laymen going about that. Look all that up, because that stuff's fascinating. But if you're a parent watching this children's story, as we are, like, again, what a good story will do, and I think story for kids even does, is it introduces you to these big, meaningful concepts. We're starting talking about a kid's movie, The Prince of Egypt, and we stumble onto the problem of suffering and
suffering and death.
And suffering and death. And these are what children start to wrestle through, whether they're getting introduced through these shows or not. So it's like, this is why these stories are important.
Yeah. And then the last thing here is, the Moses encounters father, brings father to his people, and then the people group is born, and it's born through blood and water. And just like humans are born through blood and water.
Yeah.
And if that's not too graphic for everybody. And then also 2,000 years later, the Messiah, when he births the new humans, when he births the body of Christ through his sacrifice, when he's stabbed, he also produces blood and water.
Yeah.
And then, obviously the sacraments in the, Christian faith are both blood and water. And so there's this idea that, like, in order to bring a new thing forward into the world, it passes through blood and water. So that's how this movie concludes, is, they come through the Red Sea.
Yep.
The Egyptian army is wiped off the face of the earth. And then Ramses is left where we found Moses initially. You have no father, you have no mother, you have no people. You barely avoided death at the hands of water. Only Ramses, by his actions, has left him without recourse. Like, there is no one rushing to bring him family. So
yeah.
I
mean, it's and again, another animator flex, but obviously the trek through the Red Sea is so stylistically cool. Just nail it, and it's got that feel of the divine that comes. They animated the music, all that, like it culminates in that. But cool moments, and then despite all the dark topics, like, cool going through with your kids, and cool to introduce them to, like, in an entertaining way, but also like a educational. Sounds trite. It's not. It's more than that. It's like you're opening up conversations about big topics, and
and
not just not just some fairy tale Bible story.
And that's the thing, is, like, even I think if anyone's hanging with us by episode 21, they know that we both are people of faith, and that's the way that we're taking in a lot of these things with that context. But even without that, you can watch the Prince of Egypt as, like, an unbelievably powerful myth. The same way you can watch Hercules as this unbelievably powerful myth without having to believe in Apollo and Zeus and, Aphrodite. Like, to acquaint yourself with the structure of the Western canon, which is Middle Eastern canon, is where it all starts. But or in Egypt, like, this is African canon, right? So the story of the West, the way it plays out, the way narrative is framed, all in a lot of ways originates from this story. And so, even watching it as a complete fairy tale, it is like one of the dopest fairy tales, or it wouldn't still be around.
Totally.
And so, the idea, the trying to parse myth and truth, it's like, did this happen? And if it did happen, did it happen this way? That might be a question that's less important than...
It's a wrong question.
Are the lessons that I take away from this story valuable and powerful? And will they orient my life in, like, an upward trajectory? And, unequivocally, yes.
Well, if you, what I brought up with the plagues, if you live tyrannically and enslave others and hold people to do your bidding, whether it's part of your tradition or culture, whatever or not, like, is it true that eventually that comes crashing down around you?
Yeah.
That
eventually the fabric of reality resents it.
The fabric of reality resents it, and then there's something, whether that's God or a spiritual entity or whatever. Like, throughout history, we've seen that pattern play out. So, is that true? Did it happen that way?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Like being, and so I think like learning how to relate to these stories in that way is far more important than the like historicity of that in that moment and in that time. And there's a lot of interesting stuff that talks about what happened at that moment and at that time, which is like not crazy far off. And so like there's all that stuff is worth wrestling with, like people who are better suited, more qualified than us. But we just want to get you thinking in kind of some of these new ways and these new terms about these stories you're watching with your kids all the time. Anyway.
Yeah. They're not just dumb cartoons. And I would say nothing that we have reviewed is just some dumb cartoon. Even the ones that I don't like. Yeah. They're still not just some dumb cartoon.
No.
The amount of effort that goes into crafting these things, it's really hard to have happenstance in there. You know, it can be done. You know, never underestimate the you know, the power of
unconscious and
hypocrisy
random,
but
the one kind of last note on this one too, you're talking about the place and time of this in ancient Egypt and Middle Eastern historical characters. You know, you hear this trope that like, man, all these whitewashed Bible stories where they think all the characters are Caucasian, like this is a story in the 90s, like none of the characters are Caucasian, and I don't remember ever feeling like they could be or should be or anything like that.
Never occurred to me once.
It doesn't even register. Like watching it, it's like, no, okay, that's what fits. And I mean, the ethnic identities of the characters here seem, I mean, they're accurate to the place and time they were, but they're not important to the story.
Yeah. It's like it's like you're asking the wrong questions. That's like the least interesting thing to find out about these people and what they did and their stories and their it's just the wrong question. Like you just go like it says more about the asker than it does about the answerer, you know, like
Well, I mean, to me, it's like the bigger message and truth that is in a story like this is far more interesting than like the demographics of it.
The universal
the reaction I almost have is like, why would you even want to talk about that? Like, not that it's bad or it's wrong, but it's like it pales in comparison.
Boring. It's such a boring conversation comparing.
Do you see the implications around this? And especially, I think, understanding some of these like stories symbolically and connection and the history of Western and all these things, right? Like that gets my blood pumping. That gets me excited around that. And so to just boil it down to that is like, there's interest in that. And like,
I'm more drawn to the universality. You just want to look at it and be like, hey, be more interesting. And like just move on.
That's funny.
All right.
So Prince of Egypt.
Subscribe. Tell your friends about it. If you know someone else that watches too many of these movies and they'd love like a nice little refresher on what to do with your brain while you're watching kids movies for the 100th time, like, hey, send this their way. See if they
like, comment, subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Peace.